Our special guest today, I'd like to call Mr. Professor Jesus Lau from the Universidad Veracruzana, the fourth largest public university in Mexico, which is he's one of our keynote speakers this year. Dr. Lau is a well-known leader and spokesperson for information literacy, information skills for learning. He has traveled professionally to more than 60 countries as a passionate advocate for the role information competencies play in our global knowledge society, the potential of information to transform lives, and the importance of information literacy for lifelong learning. He has played a national and international leading role as a member of the board of directors of the Special Libraries Associations in the United States, the first foreigner to have this role in its 100-year history. In addition, representing SLA at the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions in the Netherlands, in several roles, among them serving 2 terms on the governing board on the executive committee, and was the first chair of IFLA's Information Literacy section. Welcome, Professor Lau.
Okay, I'm going to get away from the mic. You know, I went rafting yesterday. And it was good. I wasn't scared, before going. But once I was there, I think I survived. And the analogy that I have, I have 2 analogies. The analogy that I have is that I think the waters for information literacy were calm before. Nowadays, the current is going faster. And there is more water going through the river. The word that I learned yesterday is that when you are approaching a waterfall, you have to paddle faster so that you will do well in jumping. And the word that my Croatian Bosnian colleagues used was pomalo. So I think as we go to this media information current, we have to paddle faster. We have to use this word that Croatian do, pomalo. Okay, the second analogy that I have is that, well, I love the theme of the conference, and I must say thank you for inviting me, Patrick and Radko. I think the subject is very important nowadays. It's a topic of several conferences, not only here in Bosnia, but all over the world. The fake news phenomenon is not new. It has been mentioned by some of the speakers yesterday. But finding the truth is difficult. I got this bag here, and imagine that the truth is somewhere here. The truth can be white, can be paper-based, can be green, can be sour. So finding the truth is difficult. It can be bitter, sweet. It may have several shapes. How can we help the students to have the proper learning to identify the truth? Truth is difficult because truth is relative, a relative term. Every one of us has a truth. But we have to learn how to identify, how close to the truth people are when we talk to them, when we read an article or a journal. Okay? So my objective today is to reflect on how can we facilitate information literacy learning, and not use as a base the experience that I have at one of the universities that I work for. Okay? Okay, the subjects are basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about truth. The time isn't that much, but I'll be focusing mainly on how to design an information literacy course, a media information literacy course. This subject has already been touched a lot yesterday, so I won't go through it, but certainly our society has several challenges. Gossip is not new. Gossip has been with us since the advent of civilization. But nowadays everything is faster, quicker, and wider. The new digital developments, all these social networks like Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube, information is more centralized, more than ever. So now it's easy to gossip, with people who live here in Bosnia or in an African country or Latin American nation. However, I should mention something. Most of the information that we get through this social media has several elements of marketing. And marketing nowadays is more scientific than ever. They normally know how we think and how we feel. Most of the marketing that we get, most of the news appeal to our feelings, and our feelings are more difficult to manage. Here are some statistics that you probably don't have to analyze that much, but basically the world is going digital quite fast. There is still a big gap in the world, but most parts of the world have access in certain ways, sometimes limited, and sometimes in the full access of internet. And the challenge that we get is that people are beginning to take social networks, news or information as true sources, especially among youngsters. When they get all this news that come, when they are watching a video, whatever, they take for granted this information. Now, how can we contribute to the learning? There are obviously different scenarios. Obviously, family is one of them, and I'm going to talk about that, but certainly the family environment has a role to play in terms of identifying truth, identifying facts as much as they can. The other one is the school, the one that I'm going to focus upon. The third one is the workplace. Even our workplace should have policies in regard to how to handle information and media. And simply at the social level, I think governments should have policies to create this media and information leadership culture. UNESCO is about to launch this October a project that is called New Cities, which is media and information literacy cities. And then they are planning to award this recognition to cities that have the proper infrastructure and a structure to promote media and information literacy. But let's focus on schools, or in this case, universities. You know the competences already. I just focus on the second one. I think the phenomenon that we have is that media follows us. In libraries, we have focused more on information literacy. We have focused on how to assess academic information, quality information. But media itself, that comes to us every day, it can be every hour, every second, as long as we have our cell phone. Media shapes and permeates our daily decisions, what we eat, how we dress, what we do. And certainly, we need to facilitate media literacy along with information literacy. We need to facilitate the learning of how to shield, how to protect ourselves from all this information bombardment. We need to learn when to hook off Facebook or YouTube in order to do more productive activities. How to filter information. Now, there is an author that is called Huron. He has a very good theoretical framework about learning cycles. He calls them life cycles. And I would recommend to read this guy. But basically, he talks about 4 different steps. When we learn something, it begins with feeling, then with intuition, followed by reflection and intention. And the example that he gives is that, for example, you feel hungry, is a feeling. You decide to eat. And then you decide what to eat. You take a pancake or soup or whatever. And then the decision to cook it or to go to a restaurant. Obviously, this is it's divided in 4 parts, but in real terms, it mixes. It's an internal process that you have to take into account. And this is something that we as librarians need to learn, because I feel that we as librarians tend to focus on the action part. How a student can do a right essay, how to cite, how to quote. But here, in the nutrition part, we need to have this social information nutrition, where people can quickly define or identify truth, using their own nutrition. And this is something that can be achieved well in education. Here is graphic. This is affective mode, what we call imaginal mode, conceptual mode, and practical mode. Did you see? It is your feelings, your decision to do something, your selection or the choices that you are making, and here is the action that you are already taking. But if we were to get to this part, I think society will be better off than it is right now. Because when you get this media through your cell phone, you don't have time to go and check your reliable sources, go to the library and check the website. When you get this information that you're not looking for, it comes to you. You have to assess it immediately. But you need to have this media and information literacy skills in order to do it. Okay. Obviously, this is a big task for education and libraries. The best way is to have, a proper educational system. I would say an internal educational system doesn't need to have media information literacy courses, because it's part of the whole educational process. But since the world is not perfect, we need to contribute, with these kind of courses, credit courses, in order to help the educational system to provide a better education. So the next step I'm going to give you is how to create a credit course for media and information literacy for undergraduates. The last part, is something that I call complementary actions. We do all these workshops, guided tours of the library, and so on. But the best one, obviously, will be the first option, but this is difficult to have in real life. Okay, the proposal that I have, and you have a copy with it, it used to be, it is actually a nice poster, but it was larger that I could handle in my PowerPoint, so I broke it into parts, and now the design doesn't look that appealing. But anyhow, the information is there. Basically, it's 3 parts. The first one is to identify what is your institutional goal. How are you going to contribute to that institution with your course? Then to identify what are the skills or competencies that you want to achieve. In the second one, what kind of journey you want to have for your students or to suggest them. And this experience I'm sharing with you is part. Let's see if I have it in the next slide. Okay, I'm gonna jump the first one. The experience I'm going to share with you, is part of an institutional approach by a university that is called CETIS. This institution is a privilege to work for because as part of the strategic plan of the university, they have the goal to become an information culture institution. And this means that anything that has to do with media and information literacy is part of the educational planning of the institution. And the whole plan, which is a 10-year strategic plan, is to have students with media and information skills that they come out from the program. So one of the first steps that we did, how is time? Okay. One of the first steps was to develop a rubric for undergraduate syllabus. This rubric has 10 steps that supposedly every program ought to comply if we want to have this media and information literate students. And this includes things that you are familiar with. We recommend faculty to avoid using textbooks, to use English materials. It has to be up to date, that they have to request at least one essay in the course, that they have to comply with APA standards, and so on. Then there is a paper published at ESLO, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, with a full rubric. And it's quite good because it guides professors on how to create this environment in their own classes to provide the information skills that students need. The third part is that we have a handbook with media information literacy exercises that professors can adopt, or can use as an example for their own classes. It can be chemistry, it can be math, it can be history, or whatever. The handbook is on a website of the university, where we're hoping to get it published by the end of the year. Hopefully, we're going to get it in English in order to share it with the international community. We have also 2 booklets on how to write essays, how to cite, how to do bibliographies, and so on. And the latest achievement was 2 years ago is that every undergraduate has to take an 8-credit course on media and information literacy. And this is proposed for every student in the different colleges. And we also have an institutional assessment. Originally, we were using iSkills, and second, iSkills is going out of use. We're using sales. But beginning next year, this August, we'll have our own assessment skill in Spanish. Because the English ones have the bias of the language and the sources. So we commission or hire a team to develop the assessment, skill assessment tool. Okay, if you're going to create a course, the first thing that you have to do is identify how the course will contribute to the institutional goals. The one that I'm using here is the ACRL framework, in regard to how can the course contribute to research. Students have to learn this bigger picture, but obviously you have to take into account your own institution. For example, the institution you work for, the students have to be bilingual by the end of the term. So, readings, we recommend that 50% of the readings have to be in English. So, they have to have research skills, so the course should focus on this bigger or larger institutional goals. Obviously, when you do an media information literacy course, you are naming the students on how to do research, how to do research. The second part, ACRL created this framework a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and then decided to discard the standards, the competency standards, which I myself believe that wasn't a good idea. Because when you have an institution that is competence-oriented, you need to identify what are the competencies that you need to work on in the media and information literacy course. Here, these competencies are based on the Mexican information literacy competencies. Mexico is the only Spanish-speaking country that created its own standards. They are inspired basically on SRL in the Australian and New Zealand ones. The competencies, they were mentioned yesterday by our colleagues from the Emirates. But basically, it's a journey of how to identify a subject, look for the information, and especially assess it. We should keep in mind that information literacy it's between research methods, maybe informed research methods in writing. So when we do information literacy, we have to include a little bit of research methods in essay writing, for example, but we should not forget that the course is media information literacy. So as evaluation of information, assessment of information should be the major component of the course, assertion, and so on. The course flow. The course flow is similar to the one that you may have. Basically, students have to identify a topic that is relevant to them, usually a topic that is, it can be from another course. Then they learn as a second step the principles of intellectual property and so on. And we take them to a journey where they learn the different steps in order to develop these media information literacy skills. That concludes with publishing a paper on Wikipedia, so they have this real feeling that the paper can be rejected, that can be criticized by others, and so on. Conclusions. I believe, that life is dialectic. We need to have a day, a child day like today. We still have to have a night. So, our digital society has the benefits and the negative impacts of this media and information explosion. What we have to learn, we have to do in our library positions is to enable the students to take the best of this digital society. And I think libraries have a more important role than ever. We have to do this from our children have to power faster because the waters have a greater speed and there is more water in the river. And I think we have to enable the students or citizens to be part of this society and to benefit from it. And I think formal education is a great tool. And if we do it, we'll certainly be able to identify truth in a decent way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.